4 o'clock hour, senior writer for theathletic.com is Max Olson. He joins us on Thursdays, most every Thursdays in the 4 o'clock hour. Max, thanks for your time with Paul and Craig, David Smoak as well. It almost sets up, not quite, but based on how the Big 12 standings and who's playing this weekend, I think the word has almost been like a semifinal type bracket. That doesn't mean if TCU loses, they're done, but don't you kind of see it that way with the two games we have at Austin and Waco?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to get a lot of clarity on who really has a viable shot of getting to Arlington after this weekend. Certainly, yeah, TCU's got room for a loss here and to still be well in front of this thing. And I think I haven't totally worked through it, but I think if TCU wins this weekend, pretty much a lock they're going to the Big 12 title game, right? Have you guys worked through that?
Yeah, I believe you're guaranteed. Yeah, I think they earn
pretty
one
much,
at the win.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they have to go through Texas and Baylor, and those two are still in it. But it's going to be really interesting, especially when you have when like to see Vegas put Texas as a 7-point favorite at home against TCU. It tells you that there's a lot of sharp people out there who think that Texas matches up with them really well, and I'm fascinated to see if they're ready for that challenge. And certainly K-State's got to rally after what happened last weekend and be ready to go against a Baylor team that I thought really played with some really impressive confidence in Norman.
Max, do you see? I mean, there's a very real scenario where there's a 12-0 team versus a 9-3 or 8-4 team in the championship game, which for the 12-team playoff, what might be a little bit of a nightmare down the road, but this league is just going that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think probably so. Yeah, and it's going to be, you look at like the way this is setting up too. We were talking about this on our podcast today. Like I think if TCU were to lose a game, because I think it's just going to be really hard to go 13-0. I'm not putting it past them, but I think it's just going to be really hard. I suppose this is the game you want to lose rather than coming up short in the Big 12 title game, even if it's as close as the Baylor Oklahoma State game last year. I think don't you guys think that probably does a little bit more damage to you to take that loss right at the very end there when there's a bunch of one-loss teams nipping at your heels versus a loss right now that you could potentially avenge down the road?
Yeah, I think they're done with a loss either way. But I'm with you. Yeah, like you could take that. You could get a win back against Texas in the championship game if you lose this weekend.
Right, which is the opportunity Oklahoma State had basically.
Yeah.
in terms of getting to make up for the one you lost. So yeah, am I remembering that
Baylor
right?
Baylor lost in Stillwater, but then got to catch them later on in the year. Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see which of these teams can emerge from the pack and be ready to play TCU, and can TCU continue to just play at this really high level here and continue to kind of survive 4 quarters against these teams.
So, Max, TCU was able to, have a big fourth quarter, pull away once again.
Yep.
Starting quarterback gets hurt for the opposing team again, but Morton had been dealing with an ankle. And then on the other side, here's Texas, who just looks like they're going to blow the doors off K-State, and the Wildcats fight back to make it a closer final score. But what do you see from this Texas team that you find could be quite problematic outside of, hey, it's in Austin, college game day is going to be there, because obviously that adds a little something to the mix as well.
Yeah, certainly it does. There's a lot of pressure. I think the atmosphere is going to be pretty crazy on Saturday night. And you guys know when college game day starts that early, man, people are going to be drunk at that game. It's going to be wild. I think that the difference when Texas and TCU played last year was Bijan Robinson, and just TCU could not find a way to stop him, especially on the critical plays late, and certainly that could be the case again this year. I mean, I think that the way he played against K-State was just so impressive. I think he continues to make the case that he's the best running back in the country, and certainly it's going to take the kind of game that you saw from Quinn Ewers last week and not the one you saw in Stillwater. He's got to play with some poison in this moment. But certainly the ability of Texas's offense to get up on you, I think is really dangerous for TCU defense. That's been pretty good, maybe above average, but still has room to grow. And but certainly if Texas, I think we all know if Texas gets out, jump out to a big lead in this game, I think we're all going to be saying, "Buckle up! Here comes the comeback from TCU," because this team just knows how to respond and keep clawing.
It's a team that starts well, Texas, and a team that finishes well in TCU.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So Kansas State was rolling along. They hammered Oklahoma State. It was shocking, really stunning how easy it was. And Oklahoma State's now kind of in a free fall. Kansas State got back in the game, but it appeared to me, and I hate to bring this up, but it's true, Adrian Martinez kind of had the Nebraska demons come back at him.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things at the very end there come down to not getting good enough protection, right? I mean, there was D-linemen coming from behind on him and stripping the ball out. I mean, certainly I think Texas's defense, stood up at the end there and made some, they had to go defend a game-winning drive, and they did a good job of forcing a couple fumbles there and recovering the second one. So part of that is just the pressure that was able to get to him by the end of that game. And look, Texas also just did a pretty good job against Deuce Vaughn, which not many teams can walk away from a game against K-State saying, yeah, we feel like we contained them pretty well. But Texas was able to do so. I think you've seen that defense take some strides. Now, obviously, how do they respond to this one with everything that TCU can throw at you, and hopefully Quentin Johnson is healthy for this one. But man, I think Texas is rolling into this game pretty healthy here. And yeah, for K-State, you got to just kind of put that one behind you. And, I really do believe in that Wildcat team. I think they are built for this opportunity here to stay in this race in November. I think they're veteran enough, and I don't think they're going to be intimidated by what's next for them in Waco.
Max, I know this is not by far one of the intriguing games of the Big 12 this week, but given Oklahoma State's rash of injuries and what's going on there now, do you think there's a real possibility that Iowa State could actually make it a winning streak when they roll into Stillwater this week?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can't rule it out. I mean, certainly you need to see Spencer Sanders in that game, and just the absence of him made all the difference on Saturday when they played Kansas. And look, Iowa State, they're not a very sexy team to watch. Certainly offensively, they've struggled far more than I expected they would. As great as Xavier Hutchinson has been, I thought Hunter Deckers would be a lot more productive this year. The run game, you're finally starting to see it a little bit, but it's just been a struggle all year. And yet Iowa State's in these games because they've got one of the best defenses in the country. Bottom line, they've got the best defense in the Big 12, and that gives them a chance in these games. And so, we'll see what kind of shape Oklahoma State's in. And obviously, it's time for them to bounce back after getting embarrassed in back-to-back weeks here. But yeah, Iowa State's got a lot to play for here. I don't think this is a team that has given up, and certainly they're still trying to get to a bowl game.
Get into a bowl game is something that the Kansas Jayhawks have now accomplished, Max, for the first time under Lance Leipold and the first time in a really long time. You have that in your preseason Big 12 predictions?
I went and visited KU this spring and, walked away. I mean, Lance Leipold is as likable a coach as there is in this conference in the country. And you walk away feeling like, look, they've got the right people there. Like, just give it time. This is finally kind of heading in the right direction. They've got like a really competent staff there that's got a blueprint. And for me, like, I just thought year two, you like take some good steps forward. Obviously at Kansas, it really matters whether you win your non-conference games or not, because it's just that affects how many Big 12 games you have to steal. And in their case, they won all their non-conference. And then, and it's crazy too. You guys think about it, like next year, Houston will be in the Big 12. I mean, Kansas won 6 games and 5 of them are basically against Power 5 opponents. I mean, that's just unbelievable to do that in year two. And they weren't doing it against the worst teams in the conference by any means. I think that, that one against Oklahoma State really showed that team's got a lot of fight, and just so impressed. No, I thought they'd win 3-4 games this year, and that would be good progress, honestly, in terms of having just reasonable expectations. But clearly that's a team that was tired of losing, and just didn't give up after Dylan Daniels got hurt. And so it's been so fun to see them continue to kind of chase something that just nobody thought was possible there.
Max, your thoughts on the top 4 kind of worked out, after much consternation last week. The top 4 kind of worked out exactly as everybody thought would this week. And of course, we've got Ohio State, Michigan here coming up in 3 weeks. But what are your thoughts on how it's shaken out, maybe below, and some of the teams that could sneak in should teams start to lose?
Yeah, I didn't have really a lot of problems with the way the rankings came out this week. I think that obviously you were curious to see how much did Alabama and Clemson get penalized, and to put them at 9 and 10 seems about right. I think that I think that the Pac-12 race, I think we're all going to have to kind of turn our attention to that one a little bit here, because you've got 3 8-1 teams, and Oregon's up to number 6 now, but they're about to play a doozy of a schedule. They've got Washington, who has the number 1 passing offense in the country this week. They guys still got to play Utah and Oregon State, and potentially Pac-12 title game. I think that race is going to be so interesting, and it's going to affect the Big 12 certainly, and just kind of how, if TCU were to take a loss, how does it compare to these other teams that are in the mix here? And I think if you're a Tennessee fan, being at number 5, you're probably fine with just where this is all kind of playing out. I mean, certainly there's things that could disrupt the order here. If LSU goes out and wins the SEC somehow, then yeah, that would mess things up quite a bit. But I think Tennessee's probably content to, the schedule's not that brutal going forward for them, and they've got a chance to just kind of keep winning and wait for somebody ahead of them to lose.
Max, that was clearly a huge win for Brian Kelly and LSU the other night, but it did lead to a lot of talk about Alabama and sort of where they are. Where are you on the temperature gauge of Alabama as a program and their dynasty and Saban and all the talk about, are they finally starting to fall? Where are you with the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, I'm not gonna come on here and say the dynasty's over by any means, but I'll tell you what, guys, so last year I went to Alabama, Texas A&M. Certainly that was just a huge night and such an impressive night for A&M. But I walked away from that game feeling like Alabama's probably a year away. I felt like they'd be really set up nicely in 22. And watching them line up against Texas this year live, you just weren't that scared of them. They're just they've got, Will Anderson's terrific. Bryce Young obviously can put on the cape and go win any game. I mean, they've got some really talented players, but there's just some of those spots, whether it's the receivers, the secondary, or whatever, you just aren't really that blown away. They don't really look like one of the best teams in the country, just eyeball test. And it's going to be so interesting. Nick Saban's going to go through, I think, probably a lot of change this offseason. I'm sure the Alabama fans want to see a new OC and a new DC, and I'm sure there will be some staff changes and probably, especially if Georgia were to go win another one. I mean, gosh, that would really crank things up in terms of the urgency at Alabama. But I'm just really fascinated to see, how does Alabama respond? Do they go out and get a transfer quarterback this offseason, or do they feel like they have the guy in the building to replace Bryce Young? It's just going to be a fascinating offseason to change for Alabama, because clearly they're just maybe not totally playing to the level of their talent, or I don't know what it is, but it's just, they've just been in 4 games this year where you're just like, man, that was a pretty losable game.
Max, thank you. As always, Max Olson, theathletic.com senior college football writer, with us on Thursdays at